Oh, Beetle Bailey, you will always be relevant, despite the fact that you take place in the 1940s. It's been a while since I read the funnies. You know, I had to go out today and get all these newspapers for the video, and I'm looking at the comics. I'm like, yeah, damn straight, it's been a while. I remember reading these when I was a little kid. My favorites were always Beetle Bailey and Hagar the Horrible, which I guess they realized because they are now the headliners for these entire comics. Never been a big Garfield guy myself, though. Where is Garfield? They usually put him in the front. Oh my god, did they finally get rid of Garfield? Did Garfield dead? Did they finally kill the cat? No, he's on the back, of course. They shoved him in the back, so there's Garfield. You want me to read you Garfield? It is relevant to this video. Maybe. Okay, so Garfield, right? Okay, so we have Garfield hanging out here in an empty field. I know that feeling, personally. And then, what was the name of the dog? Odie. Odie comes up to Garfield and he has a stick, implying that he wants to play fetch. And Garfield's like, let me guess. You want me to throw that stick, right? All right then, boy, fetch the stick. So Garfield throws the stick and Odie's all excited. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna play fetch, but... oh, Garfield's a massive troll because he kept the stick and he's like, ha, I fooled you, dog. You will now be on to a adventure to your inevitable demise with no rewards whatsoever because I wield the stick. And Garfield walks away like, how gullible can you get? Poor Odie. Poor dumb Odie. But Odie gets the last laugh because in the last panel we see him eating out of Garfield's food dish, which would be cat food. I don't know if your dog eats cat food. My dog is a picky little... yeah, she doesn't like cat food, but whatever. Okay, that's comedy there. They have to make these every single day. They're not all gonna be winners. But alright, today's video is going to be all about journalism in the One Piece world and the World Economic Journal, and by extension of that, Big News Morgans, who... actually, I don't know what Morgan's is. He can't be a mink. Minks are all mammals. He's a bird. Is this like... alright, it's either a devil fruit or Oda is introducing yet another species, or he's the byproduct of way too much, you know, bird humping in the One Piece world. Like, my father was an eagle, my mother was a robin, not that robin, this robin, and then I came out looking like this. He's like, oh no, he's a complete freak of nature. But he grew up to be the Baron of news media, so... comparison to modern day? I don't know, but okay. So there's a situation there. That is actually interesting. I'm gonna throw out the thing and just say he has the power of a devil fruit. It might actually be a devil fruit that's very similar to Karasu's, because Karasu is basically the news network for the Revolutionary Army. He can send out his crows to carry newspapers and information and top secret packages and things to all the various Revolutionary Army bases all over the world. Kind of similar to what Morgan's can do, because the way he controls his seagulls seems to be like he just has them all and they just all listen to him, whether that be because of a devil fruit or he's just a big bird man so they all listen to him. He might be like Big Bird. It might just be a costume for all we know, but you just never know. It wouldn't be the exact same thing as Karasu though, because Karasu, yeah, he can send out his crows, but he himself does not look like a crow. It actually looks more similar to like Pell's fruit that turned him into a falcon. So maybe that's something with Morgan's, like he just had a fruit that turned him into a regular bird and he can maybe communicate with other birds and, you know, send them out and have them obey his every will, and that's how he does it, you know, okay. A little bit of backstory for this video, because this is actually relevant to the video. So it's the middle of May right now, okay, and this is the time when a lot of people are graduating, you know, high school or moving on to college or graduating college and starting careers. If that applies to any of you, I wish you all good luck with your lives or college or whatever you happen to be doing. You did it. Good job. And, you know, I'm on Facebook, I'm looking around, and I'm seeing a few people that I went to school with, and they're in higher education at this point, or higher education. This one girl that I went to high school with just got her doctorate the other day. Her doctorate. And I'm like, holy crap, good for her. But I'm like, man, maybe I should do a video based on my bachelor degree, what I actually got. You know, it took me like 6 years to get the damn thing. I might as well do something on it, right? Not 6 years to get it. I took a few years off. I procrastinated a little. I got the bachelor's degree. That's what matters, okay? And my bachelor's degree was in digital media communications and also journalism, closely tied with that. I took a lot of classes on editing, both in print media and also editing on the computer, which is very applicable to what I do now, so I thought it fit for a major. I learned a lot about news, like broadcast news. I learned a lot about how even radio news used to work. So if I ever need to do a video video on how AM and FM waves are different, I can do that too. But in the One Piece world, the newspaper is extremely important. In fact, most of the biggest news we ever get in this series that's important to us, the fan base, comes from the newspaper. Whenever there's a chapter, when a character busts out the newspaper, it's like, okay, buckle your straps, kids. It's gonna get real, because this is when we find out about new bounties. This is when we just find out about random information. Like, we're looking at it, it's like, Edward Weevil is attacking this island, and it's the island where Marco is. What? You know, that's where we get this information, okay? Now, the One Piece world, kind of limited in terms of the way that they get the news. It seems like island by island, a lot of times they will have their own newspaper, and that would just deal with, like, island affairs. Like, Water 7 actually had 2 newspapers that I know of. They had the Mizu Mizu paper, and they also had just, I think, the Water 7 News, because one was mentioned as the one that, like, reported on Iceberg's attempted assassination, and then there was, like, another random one. So that's an example of one island, one city, Water 7, that actually had multiple newspapers, which is more, you know, comparable to what this world is. I mean, we have 3 main ones that I just picked up today. We have Tribune Democrat, we got the Altoona Mirror, and we got the Tribune Review. So something like that, just about local papers, what's going on in the immediate area, right? But when it comes to worldly affairs, global issues, there's only one paper that we really got for all of that. One source of news media, and that is the World Economic Times, sometimes referred to as the World Economy Journal, World Economy Newspaper. There's a few different translations of it, right? This is the paper that we always get to see carried by the News Coup. And the News Coup have been a staple of One Piece ever since way back during the East Blue Oda established. Yeah, there are no flying machines or anything in One Piece, and most of the world is water, so how do people get their newspapers when they're sailing around? If they're the Marines, or if they're, you know, pirates, or if they're just, you know, sailing civilians, how do they get the news? Well, the obvious conclusion is seagulls. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you would jump to, right? Hey, look, they talk into snails to communicate. Why not just use seagulls? In fact, I started to think, though, obviously you wouldn't have, like a broadcast news in One Piece, like, hello, welcome to the Nightly News. I'm Dick Dirksen. Today we're going to be talking about the attempted assassination of Big Mom by pirate Monkey D. Luffy, here on the Nightly News at 6, brought to you at Marie Joie. You know, so, you know, you can't have that, but then you start thinking, why not? They have visual Den Den Mushis that can relay not just recorded footage, like live video feeds. You know, that's what freaking Hody did. You know, when he was taking over Fishman Island, there were the visual transponder snails all over the place that were broadcasting a live feed of him, you know, announcing to the island, I'm taking this place over. So maybe the visual Den Den Mushi are a little more rare, though. Maybe you can't find them all over the place. But hey, the world government is all about controlling the citizens, right? That they're all about propaganda and all that crap, setting the world government and the Marines up like we're super awesome. So you'd figure if I was in charge of the world government's, you know, news media department, what I would do is I would take, even if visual Den Den Mushins were rare, I would make sure every single island at least has one of them, and then you set them up in the middle of the town, like the town square, and then every nightly news broadcast straight from Marie Joie, the citizens of that island are required to gather in the middle of the town and watch the news and how awesome the government is every single day. And don't put it beyond the world government to pull that crap. They would, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe Morgans has established a monopoly. Maybe he paid some money back room so he can make sure that his paper was the only source of news media spreading to the entire world, right? So that's the situation there. We used to think actually there were different papers, like when the coup news, we always thought that was what it was called, just the coup news, because that's what most people call it, probably just like a shortening of it, plus the fact that, you know, seagulls are the ones that bring it. And so we thought that was different from the World Economic Journal, but no, turns out it's the same exact paper. And we see that later, not only for the fact that Morgans is a giant bird, he can also employ a bunch of seagulls, like, to carry his balloon around. So, yeah, he's the master of all the seagulls in the world. So, yeah, now here's the interesting part about World Economic Journal, okay? You would figure that, all right, he is connection with the government, and he does have some kind of partnership with them, because the Marines always give Morgans the wanted posters to put in his newspaper to send to the rest of the world. And there's also news regarding the government and the Marines. They can also influence what is in the newspaper, like that whole incident at Alabasta. They knew that it was Luffy and the gang that actually defeated Crocodile, but instead they spun it, and they were like, the world government's like, nope, it's Smoker and Tashigi, and they're the ones that got printed in the newspaper. They're the ones that took down Crocodile to kind of save face, right? So the government definitely has pull in what does and what does not go in the World Economic Times. However, Morgans is also a part of the Underworld. Now, this is kind of interesting because Stussy, part of the government, is also working in the Underworld as kind of like a double agent, right? So it's possible that Morgans is kind of the same deal. In fact, Morgans is one of the very few people that know Stussy's true identity. This was revealed in a SBS recently about Stussy and everything. So Morgans knows who she is, and that she's actually a member of Aegis Zero. He just chooses not to reveal that to anybody because it's sort of like a give-and-take relationship between Morgans and Stussy, where Stussy gives him some hot news, helps his paper out. He also gives some information on people that could maybe help out the government and the Aegis Zero, so it's sort of just like this balance. So I'm gonna say, yeah, even though Morgans was invited to Big Mom's tea party and everything, and he's technically part of the underground, it's kind of the same thing as with Stussy. Although it might be a little bit more tricky for Morgans, because Stussy could always just set it up, because the Aegis Zero always work in the shadows, and the Aegis Zero are also usually wearing those masks around, so you don't really know who they are. Morgans is like a globally known figure all over the place. So maybe he's trying to like screw over the government and the underworld at the same time. Like the underworld is like, Morgans, we thought you worked for the world government. You're spreading their propaganda, for God's sake. Morgans could always be like, that's what I want them to think. I actually work for the underworld, supplying information to all these brokers. And they're like, you're a genius, Morgans. But then they go over to the world government and it's like, Morgans, we heard reports you were dealing with the underworld. What do you have to say to yourself? Oh, well, you see, Gorosei, I'm actually spreading false information to them while gathering information for you. That actually might be the situation what's going on. He's kind of trying to play both fields. That bird might end up getting plucked in some serious way later on. That wasn't even a clever analogy or anything. They might actually hold him down and start pulling his feathers out for double-crossing both ends, you know, because the world government probably knows stuff about the underworld because of him, and vice versa. So it's probably going to come down that he's the common denominator there, right? And he's going to be like, okay, we're going to go all duck hunt on this guy. Dunk hunt, duck hunt. All right. So yeah, though, Morgans is an interesting character, though. Just his attitude, the way he acts, very carefree, despite the fact that sometimes, he's falling to his death, he's always careful about getting the story. So he's falling off of Whole Cake Chateau, still taking pictures like, big news, big news! So, he kind of gives the appearance that he's kind of a goofball, and I'm sure he is, but he has his hands, he has his feathers in multiple different soups right at the moment here. So I'm thinking this is going to come back to bite him in the bird equivalent of an ass. I guess birds still do have an ass, maybe not the exact same way. I'm getting off topic here. Okay, so here's something interesting though, and I went more into detail to this than I actually had to, but something that's always kind of bugged me, and the whole point why I make videos a lot of times is I'm watching something in One Piece, and every time I think to myself, like, how does that work? Or that doesn't make a lot of sense. Or how does this work because of this? I always get to bring it up in a video. In this case is, how practical is it sending your newspaper out into the world carried by seagulls? I mean, you can think of a few problems with that. Like, for number one, they're seagulls. How many papers can they really carry each? How do they know how much money the paper is? How do they tell the people buying the paper exactly that amount? How do they know that the people are putting that exact amount of berries in their little satchel? If they do know that they're underchanging the seagulls, what do the seagulls do? Do they, like, attack them? 10 berries for a paper. I'm like, screw you, seagull. I'm only giving you one. And it just attacks you. There's so many issues with this. Like, how does the particulars of this really work? I went back and I watched the episode in the East Blue Saga where they find out Luffy's first bounty, his 30 million berry bounty. The seagulls, the news coup, are prominently featured in that episode multiple times. In fact, the episode even starts off with a news coup landing on the Going Merry, and Nami is pissed off because they raised their prices. I guess there could always be like a little, because they have like a little satchel. The news coup wear their little caps, and they have a little satchel that says news on it, and that's where you put your money. And they also carry a bag of papers on one of their wings, okay? So maybe in the satchel it could say, like, we raised our prices from 10 berries to 20 berries, or whatever it is now, or 100 berries. There, you know what? Honestly, that would be a fair price for a newspaper, because that would be roughly, I think we calculated this out, 100 berries is like 90 cents, you know, and so like a paper is worth about as much as Chopper, so that's about fair there. But no, Nami was complaining they raised their prices. You know, what would have happened exactly if Nami just didn't pay the news coup, or just took the paper, or just, you know, kidnapped the bird? Well, I can assume in that situation the news coup are fairly intelligent, so they can understand human speech a little bit. But also, if you were to just kill the bird, or even kidnap it or something, bird nap it, they probably would put out an alert to never deliver the paper to you ever again. So if you like getting your one singular paper in the entire One Piece world, be nice to the news coup. Don't try to shoot them down. Don't try to shortchange them. Don't try to screw them over, because they're fairly intelligent, and if the news coup can communicate with Morgans, he sends out the news coup, they all come back at the end of the day, and Morgans could be like, all right, who screwed you guys over? And the one news coup would step forward like, there was this mean woman in the East Blue, and she took all my papers, and she stole all my money. Be like, okay, we're not going to deliver to her anymore. Put out a hit on her. Bird poop on that person's boat for the rest of their life, you know? But that's probably something equivalent to what happens. But larger question at hand here, how many papers can these gulls carry? You know, like, because it's like, okay, they put, how many papers? Like, because a lot of times we see them flying around, they're only carrying like one newspaper. Granted, they're like rolled up, so, you know, they're like this in their satchel, but they can't have more than maybe 2 or 3 of them in there, right? It doesn't look like there's that many papers. And keep in mind, these are the Sunday papers, so they're a lot more bulkier because they have ads and whatnot. I'm not sure if One Piece has ads the same as we do. They pull out, it's like, oh, you guys want to buy a new canoe? That's actually applicable to the One Piece world. Yeah, Dunham's is having a sale on canoes. Fun fact, with newspapers, the first thing that goes into newspapers, you know what it is? It's the ads. Yeah, the first thing. It's called the news hole. They get a newspaper, they throw in all the ads from the area, all the ads that are being paid to put in the paper, and then whatever space is left, that's the space that the news is prioritized in. So, yeah, how many can these birds really carry? Because you put 1 or 2 papers in there, they fly around, they make 2 stops, and they're done for the day. Or do they have to go back and reload more papers? Like, how exactly does this work? Well, I paid way too much attention to this, but I actually found a website that is all about seagulls, and one of the questions on that website was, how much can a standard seagull actually carry? And this wasn't something that has really been tested a lot. Like, people really haven't tested how much seagulls can carry around, and also they have webbed feet, so they can't exactly, like, they don't have talons like a regular bird, you can't grab them, they have webbed feet, so whatever they're going to carry, it has to be in their mouth. But it did say, a general rule of thumb is that a bird can carry comfortably up to about at least half of its body weight. I'm like, okay, that gave me something to work with here. I actually felt kind of cool. I felt like I was going all MatPat on this, like game theory or something. Like, we are going to calculate the size of these birds, how much they weigh, how many papers they could carry, so just bear with me on this, okay? So we're going to just go with that. Like, a typical bird can comfortably carry about half of its body weight. All right, so how much does a newspaper weigh? Well, I went out and I weighed the Sunday paper here, and I got about 1.4 pounds for the Sunday paper. Then I went and removed all the extra crap that's in a Sunday paper, like the advertisements and everything, and I weighed it again, and I got 0.6 pounds. Alright, so if that's the standard weight for like a normal paper, and the One Piece newspapers, sometimes they seem rather bulky, sometimes they seem thin. I'm sure there's not big news every single day of the week, right? So, if that's the situation, you need to have a bird that's, I would say, at least like 4 pounds, because you also have to add on the little cap and the little satchel they're carrying. The thing is, though, an adult, like, herring gull, a European herring gull, they only end up weighing about 2 pounds. So, it's like, here's the thing, though. Seagulls in the One Piece world are way bigger than the seagulls in our world. If you could just compare, like, it's not even close. Like, these things are huge. Going back to that same episode in the East, there's that scene with Nami and the news coup, and they're basically standing right next to each other. The news coup's on, like, the railing on the side of the Mary, and even here you could see, this bird is really big, right? So what I did was, I looked into Nami's height, which is, of course, 5 foot 6.5 inches. 5'6.5". Nami's an inch taller than me. I don't. Whatever. I'm into taller girls. That's fine. That could work for me. But anyway, yeah, 5 feet and 6.5 inches, or 169 centimeters. That's Nami's height. All right. Looking at this, I didn't calculate it so crazy. I just looked at this and I said, okay, let's just assume that railing that the news coup is sitting on, is perched on, is half of Nami's height. So let's just say half of 169 is 84.5, so around 85 centimeters. Let's try to find some bird in the world that's roughly that same size, around 85 centimeters on average or something. That's the general size of a news coup. And I went around and I did some research, and I eventually found this little guy here, or I guess I shouldn't say a little guy. He's a rather big guy. This is a Philippine eagle. All right, and Philippine eagles, interesting creatures. Most of the eagle pictures I've been looking at, they kind of have these looks on their faces like, yeah, we know we're awesome. We're birds of prey. We can soar out of the sky and grab mice and eat them. We're pretty damn majestic, if we do say so ourselves. But the Philippine eagle just kind of looks confused. Philippine eagles are between 86 and 102 centimeters tall, 9 to 17.6 pounds, and 4 to 8 kilograms for that metric out. So, we're looking at something like this in terms of the size of a news coup. And if they are weighing up to like 9 pounds minimum, they could easily carry, 4 pounds of newspapers in their satchels and things, and I think that would make sense. And the other thing you have to keep in mind, though, not just for the fact of delivering the paper, but just the fact that it's everywhere, like no matter where you are, like in the Four Blues, Paradise, Grand Line, both halves of the Grand Line, New World as well. The news coup are freaking everywhere. They don't go places that are really dangerous. You won't see a news coup probably on like Raijin Island, and they don't go to the Calm Belt also. That was revealed during Amazon Lily. The news coup don't fly all the way out there to the Calm Belt, so they have to get their newspapers through other means. But strangely, you can actually get them on in Fishman Island. So that might just be like a regular supplies or stuff coming from other sides of the New World, and then Paradise coming down to Fishman Island and delivering the paper, because they get it down there too somehow. Maybe they just drop it down the tree. There's like a little chute at the top of the mother tree, Eve, and you just drop it down that chute, and it just lands at the bottom of Fishman Island. But yeah, the fact is, these birds are everywhere, these papers are everywhere, so that means Morgan's, in order for him to have this grip on the world like he does, he has to have literally like hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, in fact, easily millions of seagulls all over the world in various bases, so they can go back and they rest. They can't just be like one single hub. They can't be like the home base of the World Economic Journal is by Ennie's Lobby, and so every single news coup flies away from that and has to come back at the day. There has to be bases for the World Economic Journal everywhere, all over the world. I'm not even sure really how the printing press and all that stuff works, how they synchronize everything. But Morgan's, he's got to be everywhere in order to make this work, right? Because otherwise, you figure seagulls, they get sick, they die, you have to constantly be bringing in more. Sometimes they might get eaten by a sea king. There's certain gull-related accidents. At the end of every year, they have like a tribute. They're like, we now pay respect to all of the news coup that died this past year, and they play a memorial, like, Fluffy, oh, he got eaten by a giant sea king. Oh, Bert, he wasn't the smartest bird, now was he? But he had heart, and that's all that mattered. He got attacked by a wild dog. He was trying to get food off the ground, like he wasn't the brightest, So they have to keep replacing them and stuff. You gotta have millions of these birds everywhere. Also, remember how Stussy and Morgan's escaped Tauntland? They had this balloon that was being carried by News Coup. They were all connected to this balloon, and they were carrying him away to his destination. So Morgan's actually does have access to one of the very few flying machines in the One Piece world, if you could really even call it a flying machine. It's being powered by birds. Kind of reminds me of James and the Giant Peach, how they, had the seagulls attached to the peach to get it to fly. I remember that. But Morgan's might be the only one that's able to control them. Like, birds, fly in that direction, and they have no choice but to listen to him. Like anybody else that tried that wouldn't be able to succeed, right? So that's the situation there. So as for the contents of the paper, well, Morgan's, since he controls everything, a lot of times he just puts stories in that are more or less just the more interesting. Yeah, whether or not it's true or not, yeah, if it bleeds, it leads. That's another thing, right? So even though he was at ground zero there at freaking Totland and he's witnessing everything, he obviously puts Luffy front and center on the paper. I'm sure Beiji and everybody were mentioned as well, and you could even think like, oh, maybe Beiji was, this is speculation. Okay, we don't know exactly how this assassination plot really got laid out, but Morgan's just kind of goes ahead and prints it front page. Luffy, mastermind behind the assassination plot of Big Mom. Right on the paper. He did that because Stussy had that theory that Luffy's actually really smart. He pretends being an idiot, so he kind of throws his enemies into a false sense of security, but in reality, he's like this genius Machiavellian schemer because he did all this crazy stuff. Enies Lobby, Marineford, all that crap. Marineford, by the way, another moment in the One Piece world, the newspaper played a very integral role in spreading out all over the place, and we'll get to that in a second, the 3D2Y message. But yeah, Stussy told Morgan's just her theory, but Morgan's went ahead and like, man, that sounds awesome, so it's kind of like, imagine like every single One Piece theory you have out there, it's just like, wait a second, Kizaru is Vegapunk? I'm gonna print this front page news! That's the kind of crap, Morgans would do, just for the sake of sensationalism, just for the sake of selling more papers, and I think more or less, I think he just gets a hard-on from riling the world's feathers, so to speak. I mean, Morgans is the kind of guy, he doesn't want to print bland news, like freaking constitutional conundrum. Okay, that might be kind of serious. Actually, I give them points for alliteration. That's good. But no. Okay, right here. An ever-evolving role. This is just an article on nursing in the area. Nurses, very important to the area. Good little soft piece of news here. But also, not something that Morgans would probably put in there. Like, I'm gonna do an entire article on the importance of shipwrights in this world. No! He's gonna put it on front page and center. Iceberg assassinates President Ginglegip from the Ginglebip Kingdom. That's the kind of stuff he would do, right? You just gotta get people reading the papers. Also, you got the Sora, Knight of the Sea comic book, which is located in the World Economic Journal, which is based off of the Germa. That's something else that we know quite a bit about because of the whole Totland arc with the Vinsmokes and everything and who they're originally based on. But yeah, they're really popular, and that comic is all over the world. Vito, who's a member of the Beige's crew, they're from the West, and he's a big fan of it. Law and Hawkins and Drake, they're all from the North, and they, know the Germa 6 from Double Six from just the fact that they're from the North as well, so they're big fans of it. So yeah, that's kind of like, think of it like Garfield, but Garfield is the only comic in the entire world that is like unified. Like, it's the only comic you can get no matter where you go, and if Garfield was just a massive propaganda machine, because that's what Sora, Knight of the Sea is. That's what it is. It's the only comic that everybody can read because it's the only one in the economic journal, I would assume. Maybe there's some other ones that are just like light pieces, but that's the most popular one. It's all over the world, and the plot of Sora, Knight of the Sea, is that Sora is this marine hero that fights with a mechanical seagull and defeats the evil pirates and the Germa Double Six. That's what his purpose is. I can only imagine what Sora, Knight of the Sea actually is. Like, I would love to read a few issues of that. Like, if Oda could reveal that as some bonus, like, this is the kind of propaganda the people of the One Piece world are exposed to every single day. It could be like, they put like a depiction of Straw Hat Luffy in the comic, and Luffy's like this evil mastermind, like, wahaha, I have defeated Big Mom, and now I will take on the world. And now, Sora walks up to him just like, haha, Straw Hat Luffy, I'm here to put your dastardly deeds to rest right here. And it just goes on and on about lies involving the Straw Hats and how they're horrible, and they depict them all as like evil pirates and stuff, and then Sora defeats them all, and he's like standing over their bodies, and he's like, haha, remember to listen to the world government, kids, from me, Sora, Knight of the Sea. That's the kind of crap that's probably in there. So I would love to see that. Or maybe even like, that's actually a really good idea. The cover the cover pages. You know how the cover pages are fan requests, sometimes they're, the stories to continue it, which, by the way, in the most recent episode of One Piece, we got animated some of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet serials. Not all of them, but we got some of them, and that was cool. We got to see the new Giant Warrior pirates, like Goldberg and everybody, and Girth. We got to see Girth, so that's lovely. I love me some Girth. But, we got Orlumbus's story a little bit, so I'm like, you could, if you want to drag out the anime a little longer, just animate the cover stories. Just do that. They probably won't, though, because Luffy and the crew wouldn't be prevalent in there, and that's like they're the main cast, so maybe they're afraid no one would watch them, but I'm glad that. But yeah, in lieu of a cover page or artwork, you could put like a 4-panel little Sora comic every now and then. Oda could do that, or he could get someone else to do it. That would be a good idea. I would read that. I would be all for that, right? So, yeah. Now, Morgan's right now, he was actually at Reverie. He went right from Totland to Reverie, so he is busy. He gets around. Considering he has one of the few flying machines in the world, I guess that would be the case, right? So, this is somebody that has ties to the Underworld that is allowed in Marijois. That is a big deal. That is a huge deal. They don't just let anybody in Marijois. Like, even regular Marines that work for the government probably would not be allowed in Marijois, in, like, Castle Pangea area if they requested it, right? But Morgan's was allowed up there to take pictures of Shirahoshi and everybody and get his newspaper ready to go. Attach was up there. Attach actually used to be a photographer for the Marines, and he would go around and take people's pictures. That's the reason Sanji's first bounty picture looks the way it does, because when he took the picture, he left the lens cap on and it was black, and so they had to draw him instead. And Attach, I think it was something like 56 times in a row that happened to him. He kept forgetting to deattach the damn lens cap, and finally the Marines let him go, just like, Attach, come in my office. Akainu calls him in. This Sakazuki is not having this. He finally calls him in, and he's like, Attach, 55, fool me 55 times, shame on me. Fool me 56 times, shame on you. You're fired. We're gonna have to let you go. So I guess 56 or something was the magic number, and he finally got kicked out of the Marines. But it's okay, though, because Morgan's enlisted him to come over, and they gave him a capless camera, so he can never worry about leaving it on, and now he takes pictures for the World Economic Journal. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, don't underestimate the power of media, especially in the One Piece world, considering you got one newspaper all over the world that I'm sure whenever the world government, like if the Gorosei wanted him to put a story in, he would put it in. If he learned something in the Underworld, even if it's just a murmuring, even if it's just a theory, he's just like, I'm gonna throw that in front page and center. Because there's no regulation! It's a monopoly! He controls everything! He can put whatever crazy story he wants in there! He could just literally be sitting at his desk on a slow news day like, freaking beak. Don't really have anything else going on in the world today. I think there is a man living on the moon that has access to an ancient weapon that can kill us all. Run it as first page! We're getting a special edition on this. Man on the moon! Turns out to actually be accurate, but he doesn't know that, that would be the kind of joke that in One Piece I could see that happening. Like, it's like, yeah, next thing you'll tell me, a man on the moon with electric powers is gonna come down and bring divine justice. Crack! In the background, Enarush, lands, okay? I mean, that would be something that would be funny. So yeah, he controls everything. Whatever he wants to go in, goes in. Now, this could be used sometimes in Luffy's favor, because the only reason he has a 1.5 billion bounty right now is because of that article that Morgans wrote. If Morgans was more of a dignified journalist, and he actually, reported just on the hard news, the facts, and was just like, hey, listen, there was an assassination plot at Totland. We know Luffy's involved. We know Beiji's involved. We know Jinbei's involved. We know all this stuff. We know the Germa were involved, but we don't know anything of the particulars. We're just going to put them all in here as like an equal keel. Their bounties probably would have still risen in that situation. Like they all would have gotten up a little bit. But the way Morgans wrote that article was basically like, Luffy is the most amazing pirate ever, and you should definitely treat him like a fifth emperor. And the government kind of you wonder, did the world government fact check that? Or was it just like, God damn it, Morgans. We can't. Well, he printed about it. The entire world is afraid of him now. We have no point. We have no choice but to raise his bounty. You know, because, you know, fine, do it. Fine, go ahead. So you'd figure a lot of the stuff he does has influence on people's bounty. Like, Beiji's bounty probably went up as well, but I'm sure if he would have written that article, like, Beiji was the mastermind behind this whole thing, Beiji would be the one that has 1.5 billion right now, or he would have a billion. He would have a higher bounty than Luffy would right now if he was the one that was written about and just gushed over. You know, the new mafioso mastermind of the new world. That's a good title. That's alliteration. Yeah, so it's all about the news media. I would even go as far to say that journalism is everything. No, that doesn't sound as good. That doesn't sound as good. News is No, that's not great. I gotta work on that. I gotta work on that. Also, did you guys know that if you take the letters that make up news, it's north, east, west, and south all over the world? Yeah, I'm not the first person to come up with that. But yes, Morgan's clearly, though, he does not follow in the footsteps of what the news truly means. He's exploiting it for his own benefit. But well, let's not lie and say that that doesn't happen in the current world that we live in. You know what I mean? But anyway, enough on that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. This will be Tekking signing out. Bam!